Sometimes it's helpful to create two box and whisker plots and compare them side by side. And so that's what I'm going to show you in this video. So here we have two sets of data. These represent points scored by a football team in the 2008 and 2009 season. So what we're going to do this time is we'll start by typing our first set of data. I've typed that into L1, and then type your second set of data into L2. So pause the video if you need to do that, get that data typed in. I've already done that. And then what we'll do is create a side-by-side box and whisker plots. You can see I've made a rough sketch down here, but I'll show you how to make that in the calculator, and then we can get this rough sketch drawn and then do a little bit of analysis. All right, so assuming your data is typed in then, let's go ahead and hit second y equals. We'll do this the same way we'd graph one not scatter plot, but box and whisker plot. It's just we have two of them now. So we'll turn our first plot on, so I'll go ahead and select plot 1. And I can see that it's turned on. I have that fourth option selected, just like we've always been doing. That'll make sure any outliers are not included in our graph. We want our first graph to draw from the L1 data, so XList says L1. Okay, so that part is set up, that part's done. Let's go back to stat plot, so it's another second y equals. This time go down to plot 2. We want to do a side-by-side comparison. I think you can do up to 3 of these if you wanted to. We'll turn on plot 2. We'll once again make sure that we have the fourth graph selected right here. This time though, and mine went by default, I don't know if yours did or not. This time the easiest thing to forget about is to make sure that this XList now says L2. So if yours didn't say L2, to get that, just press second and then the number 2. That's where that L2 is located. So we want to make sure the second graph is pulling from our second list. So once that's all set up, let's go ahead and do zoom stat so we can see a side-by-side comparison. So zoom and then option 9 down here. And your window will then be set up so you can see this graph right there. Notice there's my outlier in that 2008 series. That's the top one, 2009 is the bottom. So once again, we can hit trace and we can get these different values, so the mins, the Q1 data, and so forth. And I've gone ahead and created the sketch by hand down here. I'd recommend you do that, and in the previous video, we took a look at how to do that by hand if you need to watch that. If you want to move down to then the 2009 data, just press your up or down arrows. And again, we can then scroll left and right and see those different values down there. So there's our side-by-side comparison. There's my sketch that I've labeled down here. So again, I will recommend that you do that by hand. Pause the video if you need to. And then we're also asked to describe the type of distribution. Well, I can see that neither of these are really symmetrical. Each one has a tail section, a whisker section, I guess, that's much longer than the other one. Since the 2008 data, my long whiskers pointing to the left, that's an indication of a negatively skewed data set. We'll ignore any outliers we have. We're not going to use those to describe the shape. For your 2009 data, the red graph, I can see the longer whisker is on the right. Since that's on the right side, that's an indication of a data that's been positively skewed. Okay. Last up then, we're asked to compare these distributions, and we have two methods to do our comparison, either a means and standard deviation or a median and IQR. And because our data is skewed, we agreed that we're always going to be using the means and the interquartile ranges to compare the two sets of data. We'll do that anytime the data is skewed. So we can jot those numbers down if we want to. My median from the 2009 season is about 11.5 points. My median for the 2008 season is about 27 points. But some things I may want to jot down for a comparison. I've put a couple examples down here. You don't need to necessarily have these. There's a lot of different comparisons we can make, but we could say things like, one thing that I noticed is our Q1 data from the 2008 series, our 25 or first quartile data, is the same exact thing as our quartile 3 data for the other season. So what that's telling me, without using all this math, is that the bottom 25% of my scores in the 2008 series were the same as the top 75% scores from the 2009 season. Meaning, just right there, I'm thinking that 2008 was probably a better season. I could also compare just the medians. I can see that my median score for 2008 was 27 points. My median score for 2009 was 11.5 points. So again, based on that data, the 2008 season was better. I've kind of noted my conclusion down here, but just some specific examples I could write. Also, one thing that I noticed was that your minimum score, the lowest score we ever got in 2008 was 7 points. Our quartile 1 data for the 2009 season was about 6.5 points, meaning my lowest score here in the 2008 season there was still about 25% of the time that minimum to Q1, that 25% there was lower than even my lowest score in the 2008 season. So again, I don't expect you to necessarily tell me all that information when you're asked to compare, but just some different examples of some things you might want to say to compare your data. And it's pretty easy to do when you have the side-by-side comparisons.